Record 21. The Duty of an Author. The Ice Wells, the Most Difficult Love. Yesterday was her day, and again she did not come. Again there came her incoherent notes explaining nothing. But I am tranquil, perfectly tranquil. If I do act as I am told to in the notes, if I do go to the controller on duty, produce the pink check, and then, having lowered the curtains, if I do sit alone in my room, I do all this, of course, not because I have no power to act contrary to her desire. It seems funny. Decidedly not. It is quite simple. Separated from all curative plaster-like smiles, I am enabled quietly to write these very lines. This first. And secondly, I am afraid to lose her. In I-330, perhaps the only clue I shall ever have, the understanding of all the unknowns, like the story of the cupboard, or my temporary death. For instance, to understand, to discover these unknowns as the author of these records, I feel it simply my duty. Moreover, the unknown is naturally the enemy of man, and Homo sapiens only the man becomes in the complete sense of the word when his punctuation includes no question marks, only exclamation points, commas, and periods. Thus, guided by what seems to me simply my duty as an author, I took an arrow today at 6 o'clock and went to the ancient house. As a strong wind was blowing against me, the arrow advanced with difficulty through the thicket of air, its transparent branches whistling and whipping. The city below seemed a heap of blue blocks of ice. Suddenly, a cloud, a swift oblique shadow, the ice became leaden. It swelled, as in springtime when you happen to stand at the shore and wait. In one more minute everything will move and pull and crack. But the minute passes and the ice remains motionless. You feel as though you yourself are swelling. Your heart beats more restlessly, more frequently. But why do I write about all this? And whence all these strange sensations? For is there such an iceberg as could ever break the most lucid solid crystal of our life? At the entrance of the ancient house I found no one. I went around it and found the old janitress near the green wall. She held her hand glove, her eyes looking upwards. Beyond the wall, sharp black triangles of some birds. They would rush, cawing, in onslaughts of the invisible fence of electric waves. And as they felt the electricity between their breasts, they would recoil and soar once more beyond the wall. I noticed oblique, swift shadows on the dark, wrinkled face. A quick glance at me. Nobody here, nobody, no. And no one, no use coming here. In what respect is it no use? And what a strange idea to consider me somebody's shadow. Perhaps all of you are only my shadows. Did I not populate these pages with which only recently were white radical deserts? With you, without me, would they whom I shall guide over the narrow paths of my lines, could they ever see you? Of course, I did not say all this to the woman. From my experience, I know that the most torturing thing is to inoculate someone with a doubt as to the fact that he or she is a third-dimensional reality, and not some other reality. I remarked only quite dryly that her business was to open the gates, and she let me into the courtyard. It was empty, quiet. The wind remained beyond the walls, distant as on the day when, shoulder to shoulder, two like one, we came out from breath from the corridors. If it ever really happened, I walked under the stone arches, my steps resounded against the damp vaults and fell behind me, sounding as though someone were continually following me. The yellow halls with patches of red brick were watching me through their square spectacles. Windows watching me open the squeaky doors of a barn, look into corners, nooks, and hidden places. a gate in the fence, and the lonely spots, the monuments of the 200 years' war. From the ground naked stone ribs were sticking out, the yellow jaws of the wall, an ancient oven with a chimney like a ship petrified forever among red brick waves. It seemed to me that I had seen those yellow teeth once before. I saw them still dimly in my mind, as at the bottom of the barrel through water, and I began to search. I fell into caves occasionally. I stumbled over stones. Rusty jaws caught my youth a few times. Salt drops of sweat ran from my forehead into my eyes. Nowhere I could find that exit from below, from the corridors. Nowhere. There was none. Well, perhaps it was better that I happened so. Probably that all was one of my absurd dreams. Tired out, covered like with cobwebs and dust, I opened the gate to return to the main yard. Then suddenly, a rustle behind me, splashing steps, and there before me were the pink wing-like ears and the double curved smile of S dash. Half closing his eyes, he bored his little drills into me and asked, "Taking a walk?" I was silent. My arms were heavy. "Well, do you feel better now?" "Yes, thank you. I think I am getting normal again." He let me go. He lifted his eyes, looked upward, and I noticed his Adam's apple for the first time. It resembles a broken spring sticking out from underneath the upholstery of a divan. Above us, not very high, about 50 meters, arrows were buzzing. By their low, slow flight and by the observation tubes which hung down, I recognized them. They were the arrows of the Guardians, but they were not 2 or 3 as usual. They were about 10 or 12. I regret to have to confine myself to an approximate figure. Why are there so many today? I dared to ask S dash. Why? A real physician begins to treat a patient when he is still well but on the way to becoming sick tomorrow, day after tomorrow, or within a week. Prophylaxis, yes. He nodded and went splashing over the stones of the yard, when he turned his head and said over his shoulder, "Be careful." Again I was alone. Silence. Emptiness. Far beyond the green wall, the birds and the wind. What did he mean? My arrow ran very fast with the wind. Lights and heavy shadows from the clouds. Below, blue cupoles, cubes of glass ice, were becoming leaden and swelling. The same evening. I took up my pen just now in order to write upon these pages a few thoughts which, it seems to me, will prove useful for you, my readers. These thoughts are concerned with the great day of anonymity, which is now not far away. But as I sat down, I discovered that I cannot write at present. Instead, I sit and listen to the wind beating the glass with its dark wings. All the while I am busy looking about, and I am waiting, expecting. What? I do not know. So I was very glad when I saw the brownish pink gills enter my room. Heartily glad, I may say. She sat down and innocently smoothed the fold of her uniform that fell between her knees, and very soon she pasted upon me, all over me, a host of smiles, a bit of smiles on each crack of my face, and this gave me pleasant sensations, if I were tightly bound like an infant of the ancient in waddling clothes. Imagine, today when I entered the classroom, she works at the Children Education Refinery, I suddenly noticed a caricature upon the blackboard. Indeed, I assure you, they had pictured me in the form of a fish. Perhaps I really... No, no, why do you say that? I hastily exclaimed. When one was near her, It was clear indeed that she had nothing resembling gills. No, when I referred to gills in these pages, I was certainly irrelevant. Oh, after all, it does not matter. But the act of such, I think of it, of course. I called the guardians at once. I love children very much, and I think that the most difficult and the most ecstatic love is cruelty. You understand me, of course. Certainly. Her sentence so closely resembled my thoughts, I could not refrain from reading to her a passage from my recording number 20, beginning, quietly, metallically, distinctly, do the thoughts, etc. I felt her brownish pink cheeks twitching and coming closer and closer to me. Suddenly I felt my hands, her firm, dry, even slightly prickling fingers. Give, give this to me, please. I shall have it phonographed and make the children learn it by heart. Not only your Bavarians need all this, but we ourselves right now, tomorrow, the day after tomorrow. She glanced around and said in a very low voice, "Have you heard? They say that on the day of unanimity." I sprang to my feet. What? What do they say? What on the day of unanimity? The coziness of my room, its very walls, seemed to have vanished. I felt myself thrown outside, where the tremendous shaggy winds was tossing about, and where the slanting clouds of dusk were ascending lower and lower. Udash boldly and firmly grasped me by the shoulders. I even noticed how her fingers, responding to my emotion, trembled slightly. "Sit down, dear, and don't be upset. They say many things. Must we believe them all? Moreover, if only you need me, I shall be near. On that day, I shall leave the school children with someone else, and I shall stay with you, for you, dear, you are too a child, and you need—" "No, no," I raised my hand in protest. "Not for anything. You really think then that I am a child, and that I cannot do without a— Oh no, not for anything in the world." I must confess I had other plans for that day. She smiled. The wording of the smile was apparently was, "Oh, pardon, what a stubborn boy." She sat down, eyelids lowered. Her hands modestly buried themselves with fixing the fold of her uniform, which fell again between her knees. And suddenly, about something entirely different, she said, "I think I must decide, for your sake, but I implore you, do not hurry me. I must think it over." I did not hurry her, although I realized that I ought to have been delighted, as there is no greater honor than to crown someone's evening years. All night strange wings were about. I walked and protected my head with my hands from those wings, and a chair not like ours, but an ancient chair came in the horse like a gate. First the right fore and the left hind leg, then the left fore and the right hind leg. I rushed to my bed and crawled into it, and I liked that wooden chair, although it made me uncomfortable and caused me some pain. It is very strange. It is impossible to find any cure for my dream sickness, or to make it rational, perhaps even useful. Record 22. The the benumbed waves. Everything is improving. I am a microbe. Please imagine that you stand at the seashore. The waves go rhythmically up, down, up. Suddenly, when they have risen, they remain in that position, benumbed, torpid. It was just as weird and unnatural when everything became confused and our regular walk, which is prescribed by the tables, suddenly came to an end. The last time such a thing happened was 119 years ago, when, according to our historians, a meteorite fell hissing and fuming into the very midst of the marchers. We were walking yesterday, as usual, that is, like warriors on the Assyrian monuments, 1,000 heads and two composite integrated legs, and two swinging integrated arms. At the end of the avenue where the accumulating tower was formidably resounding, a quadrangle appeared. On the sides, in front and behind, guards. In the center, three numbers. Their uniforms were already stripped of the gold state badges. Everything was painfully clear. The enormous dial on the top of the tower looked like a face. It bent down from the clouds, and spitting down its seconds, it waited with indifference. It showed 6 minutes past 13 exactly. There was some confusion in the quadrangles. I was very close, and I saw the most minute details. I clearly remember the thin, long neck on the temple and a confused net of small blue veins like rivers on the map of a small, unfamiliar world. And that unknown world was apparently still a very young man. He evidently noticed someone in our ranks. He stopped, rose upon his tiptoes, and stretched his neck. One of the guards snapped his back with the bluish spark of the electric whip. He squealed in a thin voice like a puppy. The distinct snaps followed each other at intervals of approximately 2 seconds. A snap and a squeal, a snap and a squeal. We continued to walk as usually, rhythmically in our Assyrian manner. I watched the graceful zigzags of the electric sparks and thought, human society is constantly improving as it should. How ugly a tool was the ancient whip, and how much beauty there is. At that moment, like a nut flying from a wheel, revolving at full speed, a female number, thin, flexible, and tense, tore herself from our rows, and with a cry, "Enough! Don't you dare!" she threw herself straight into the quadrangle. It was like the meteorites of 119 years ago. Our march came to a standstill, and our rows appeared like the gray crest of waves frozen by sudden cold. For a second I looked at the woman's figure with an eye of a stranger, as all the others did. She was no number any longer. She was only a human being, and she existed for us only as a substantiation of the insult which she cast upon the United States. But a motion of hers, her bending whilst twisting to the left upon her hips, revealed to me clearly who she was. I knew that body, flexible as a whip. My eyes, my lips, my hands knew it. At the moment, I was absolutely certain. Two of the guards dashed to catch her. One more moment, and that limpid mirror-like point on the pavement would have become the point of meeting of their trajectories, and she would have been caught. My heart fell, stopped. Without thinking it was permissible or not, whether it was reasonable or absurd, I threw myself straight to that point. I felt thousands of eyes bulging with horror fixed upon me, but that only added a sort of desperately joyful power to that wild being with hairy paws which arose in me and ran faster and faster. 2 more steps. She turned around. I saw a quivering face covered with freckles, red eyebrows. It was not she, not I-330. A rabid, quivering joy took hold of me. I wanted to shout something like, "Catch her! Get her! That!" I only heard my only whisper. A heavy hand was upon my shoulder. I was caught and led away. I tried to explain to them. "But listen, you must understand that I thought that—" What could I explain? explain, even to myself, all the sickness which I have described in these pages. My light went out. I waited obediently, as a leaf that is torn from the branch by a sudden gust of wind falls humbly, but on its way down turns and tries to catch every little branch, every fork, every knot. So I tried to catch every one of the silent globe-like heads, or the transparent ice of the walls, or the blue needle of the accumulating tower, which seemed to pierce the clouds. At that moment, when a heavy curtain was about to separate me from this beautiful world, I noticed not far away a familiar, enormous head gliding over the mere surface of the pavement and waging its wing-like ears. I heard a familiar, flat voice. I deem it my duty to testify that number D-503 is ill and is unable to regulate his emotions. Moreover, I am sure that he was led by natural indignation. Yes, yes, I explained. I even shouted, "Catch her!" from behind me. You did not shout anything. No, but I wanted to. I swear by the well-doer I wanted to. For a second I was borne through by the great cold drill eyes. I don't know whether he believed that what I said was the truth, almost, or whether he had some secret reason for sparing me for a while, but he wrote a short note, handed it to one of those who had held me, and again I was free. That is, I was again included in orderly, endless, Assyrian rows of numbers. The quadrangle, the freckled face, and the temple with the map of blue veinlets disappeared forever around the corner. We walked again, a million-headed bodies, and in each one of us resided that humble joyfulness with which, in all probability, molecules, atoms, phagocytes live. In the ancient days, the Christians understood this feeling. They are our only, though very imperfect, direct forerunners. The greatness of the Church of the United Flock was well known to them. They knew that resignation is virtue, and pride a vice, that we is from God, I from the devil. I was walking, keeping step with the others, yet separated from them. I was still trembling from the emotion just felt, like a bridge over which a thundering ancient steel train has passed a moment before. I felt myself. To feel oneself, to be conscious of one's personality, is the lot of an eye inflamed by a cinder, or an infected finger, or a bad tooth. A healthy eye, or finger, or tooth is not felt. It is not existent, as it were. It is not clear, then, that unconsciousness of oneself is a sickness? Apparently, I am no longer a phagocyte which quietly, in a business-like way, devours microbes with freckled faces and blue temples. Apparently, I am myself a microbe, and she too, I-330, is a microbe, a wonderful, diabolic microbe. It is quite possible that there are already thousands of such microbes among us, still pretending to be phagocytes, as I pretend. What if today's accident, although it's itself not important, is only the beginning, the only first meteorite of a shower of burning, thundering stones, which the infinite may have poured out upon our glass paradise? Record 23. Flowers the dissolution of a crystal, if only. They say there are flowers that bloom only once in 100 years. Why not suppose the existence of flowers that bloom only once 1,000 years? We may have known nothing about them until now, only because today is once in 1,000 years. Happy and dizzy, I walked downstairs to the controller on duty, and quickly, under my gaze all around me, and silently, the 1,000-year-old buds burst, and everything was blooming. Armchairs, shoes, golden badges, electric bulbs, someone's dark, heavy eyes, the polished columns of a banister, the handkerchief which someone lost on the stairs, the small ink-blotted desk of the controller, and the tender brown, somewhat freckled cheeks of U dash. Everything seemed not ordinary, new, tender, rosy, moist. U dash took the pink stub from me, while the blue aromatic moon, hanging from the unseen branch, shone through the glass of the wall and over the head of U dash. With a solemn gesture, I pointed my finger and said, "The moon, you see?" U dash glanced at me, then at the number of the stub, and again made that familiar, charmingly innocent movement with which she fixes the fold of the unif between her knees. "You look abnormal and ill, dear. Abnormally and illness are the same thing. You are killing yourself, and no one would tell you that. No one. That no one was certainly equivalent to the number on the stub, I-330. This thought was confirmed by an ink blot which fell close to the figure 330. Dear, wonderful U dash, you are right, of course. I am not reasonable. I am sick. I have a soul. I am a microbe. But is blooming not a sickness? Is it not painful when the buds are bursting? And don't you think that the spermatozoa are the most terrible of all microbes? Back upstairs to my room, in the widely open cup of the armchair, was I-330. I, on the floor, embracing her limbs, my head on her lap. We were silent. Everything was silent. Only the pulse was audible. Like a crystal, I was dissolving in her. In I-30, I felt almost distinctly how the polished facets which limited me in space were slowly thawing, melting away. I was dissolving in her lap, in her, and I became at once smaller and larger, unembraceable. For was not she, but the whole universe. For seconds, and that armchair near the bed, transfixed with joy, we were one. And the wonderfully smiling old woman at the gate of the ancient house, and the wild debris beyond the green wall, and some strange silver wreckage on the black background, dozing like the old woman, and the slam of a door in the distance. All this was within me, was listening to my pulse, and soaring through the happiest of seconds. In absurd, confused, overflowing words, I attempted to tell her that I was a crystal, and that there was a door in me, and that I felt how happy the armchair was. But something nonsensical came out of the attempt, and I stopped. I was ashamed. And suddenly, "Dear I-, forgive me. I understood nothing. I talked so foolishly." And why should you think that foolishness is not fine? If we had taken pains to educate human foolishness through centuries, as we have done with our intelligence, it might perhaps have transformed into something very precious. Yes, I think she is right. How can she be wrong at that moment? And for this foolishness of yours, and for what you did yesterday during the walk, I love you the more, much more. Then why did you torture me? Why would you not come? Why did you send me the pink check and make me? Perhaps I wanted to test you. Perhaps I must be sure that you will do anything I wish, that you are completely mine. Yes, completely. She took my face, my whole self, between her palms, lifted my head. And how about it is the duty of every honest number? Huh? Sweet, sharp, white teeth, a smile. In the open cup of the armchair, she was like a bee, stinging and honey combined. Yes, duty. I turned over in my mind the pages of my records. Indeed, there is not a thought about the fact that, strictly speaking, I should. I was silent, exaltedly, and probably stupidly. I smiled, looking into the pupils of her eyes. I followed first one and then the other, and in each of them I saw myself, a millimetric self imprisoned in those tiny rainbow cells. Then again the lips and the sweet pain of blooming. In each number of the United States there is an unseen metronome which ticks-tocks silently. Without looking at the clock, we know exactly the time of day within 5 minutes. But now my metronome has stopped, and I did not know how much time had passed. In fright I gasped my badge with its clock from under the pillow. Glory to the doer. I had 20 minutes more. But those 20 minutes were such tiny, short ones. They ran. And I wanted to tell her so many things. I wanted to tell her all about myself, about the letter from O Dash, and about the terrible evening when I gave her a child, and for some reason also about my childhood, about our mathematician Plapa, and about the square roots of -1, and how, when I attended the glorification of the day of unanimity for the first time in my life, I wept bitterly because there was an ink stain on my Eunice. On such a holy day, I-330 lifted her head. She leaned on her elbow. In the corners of her lips, two long, sharp lines, and a dark angle of lifted eyebrows across. Perhaps on that day, her brow grew darker. She took my hand and pressed it hard. Tell me, will you ever forget me? Will you always remember me? But why such talk? What is it, dear? She was silent, and her eyes were already sliding past me, through me, away into the distance. I suddenly heard the wind beating the glass with its enormous wings. Of course, it had been blowing all the while, but I had not noticed it until then, and for some reason those kind birds over the green wall came to my mind. I-330 shook her head with a gesture of throwing something off. Once more she touched me for a second with her whole body, as an arrow before landing touches the ground for a second with all the tension of recoiling spring. Well, give me my stockings, quick. The stockings were on the desk, on the open manuscript, on page 124. Being in the haste, I caught some of the pages, and they were scattered all over the floor, so that it was hard to put them back in the proper order. Moreover, even if I put them in that order, there will be no real order. There are obstacles to that anyway, some discoverable unknowns. I can't bear it, I said. You are here, near me, yet you seem to be behind an opaque ancient wall. Through that wall I hear a rustle of voices. I cannot make out the words. I don't know what is there. I cannot bear it. You seem always to withhold something from me. You have never told me what kind of place it was where I found myself that day beneath the ancient house. Where did those corridors lead? Why was the doctor there? Or perhaps all that's never happened? I-330 put her hands on my shoulder and slowly entered deeply into my eyes. You want to know all? Yes, I do. And you would not be afraid to follow me anywhere? Wherever I should lead you? Anywhere. Alright then, I promise you, after the holiday, if only, oh yes, there is your integral. I always forget to ask. Will it soon be completed? No. If only what? Again, if only what? She, already at the door. You shall see. I was alone. I was again alone. All that she left behind her was a barely perceptible scent, familiar to that of a sweet, dry, yellow dust of flowers behind the green wall. Also, sunk deeply within me, question marks like small hooks, similar to those the ancients used for fishing, vied the prehistoric museum. Why did she suddenly ask about the integral? Record 24. The limit of the function Easter to cross out everything. I am like a motor set in motion at the speed of too many revolutions per second. The bearings have become too hot, and in one more minute the molten metal will begin to drip and everything will go to the devil. Cold water, quick, some logic. I pour pailfuls of it, but my logic merely sizzles on the hot metal and disappears in the air in the form of vapor. Of course, it is clear that in order to establish the true meaning of a function, one must establish its limit. It is also clear that yesterday's dissolution in the universe, taken to its limit, is death, for death is exactly the most complete dissolution of the self in the universe. Hence, L equals F, and between parentheses D, love is the function of death. Yes, exactly. That is why I am afraid of I-330. I struggle against her. I don't want, but why is it that within me I don't want to, and I want to, stand side by side? That is the chief honor of the matter. I continue to long for that happy death of yesterday. The horror of it is that even now, when I have integrated the logical function, when it becomes evident that the latter contains death hidden in it, nevertheless I long for it with my lips, arms, breasts, and every millimeter. Tomorrow is the day of anonymity. She will certainly be there, and I shall see her, though from a distance. That distance will be painful to me, for I am inevitably drawn close to her, so that her hands, her shoulders, her hair, I long for even that pain. Let it come. Great well-doer! How absurd to desire pain! Who is ignorant of the simple fact that are pains are negative items which reduce the total sum we call happiness. Consequently, well, no, consequently, emptiness, nakedness. The same evening, through the glass wall of the house, I see disquieting, windy, feverishly pink sunsets. I move my armchair to avoid that pinkness and turn over these pages, and I find I am forgetting that I write this not for myself but for an unknown people whom I love and pity, for you who still lag centuries behind us below. Let me tell you about that day of unanimity, about that great day. I think that day for us is what Easter was for the ancients. I remember I used to prepare an hour calendar the eve of that day. Solemnly, I would cross out every time the figure of the hour elapsed, nearer by 1 hour less to wait. If I were certain that nobody wouldn't discover it, I assure you I should now, too. make out such a calendar and carry it with me, and I should watch how many hours remain until tomorrow. Then I shall see, at least from a distance. I was interrupted. They brought me a new unit from the shop. As is customary, new units are given to us for tomorrow's celebration. Steps in the hall, exclamations of joy, noises. I shall continue. Tomorrow I shall see the same spectacle which we see year after year and which always awakes us in fresh emotions, as though we saw it for the first time. An impressive throng of piously lifted arms. Tomorrow is the day of the yearly election of the well-doer. Tomorrow we shall again hand over to our well-doer the keys to the impregnable fortress of our happiness. Certainly this in no way resembles the disorderly, unorganized election days of the ancients, on which, it seems so funny, they did not even know in advance the result of the election. To build a state on some non-discountable contingencies, to build blindly, what could be more nonsensical? Yet centuries were required to pass before this was understood. Needless to say, we in this respect, as in all others, have no place for contingencies. Nothing unexpected can happen. The elections themselves have rather a symbolic meaning. They remind us that we are a united, powerful organism of millions of cells, that, to use the language of the gospel of the ancients, we are a united church. The history of the United States knows not a single case in which, upon the solemn day, even a solitary voice has dared to violate the magnificent unison. They say that the ancients used to conduct their elections secretly, stealthily, like thieves. Some of our historians assert even that they would come to the election celebration completely masked. Imagine the weird, fantastic spectacle. Knights, a plaza, among the walls the stealthy, creeping figures covered with mantles, the red flame of torches dancing in the wind. Why was such secrecy necessary? It has never been satisfactorily explained. Probably it resulted from the fact that elections were associated with some mystic and superstitions, perhaps even criminal ceremonies. We have nothing to conceal or to be ashamed of. We celebrate our election openly, honestly, in daylight. I see them all vote for the well-doer, and everybody seems me vote for the well-doer. How could it be otherwise, since all and I are one we? How ennobling, sincere, lofty is this compared with the cowardly, thievish secrecy of the ancients. Moreover, how much more expedient, for even admitting for such moment the impossible that is the outbreak of some dissonance in our customary unit. In that case, our unseen guardians are always right there among us, are they not? To register the numbers who would fall into error and save them from any further false steps. The United States is theirs, the numbers, and besides, through the wall to my left, a she number before the mirror door of the closet, she hastily unbuttoning her uniform. For a second, swiftly, eyes, lips, two sharp pink, the curtains fell. Within me instinctively awoke all that happened yesterday, and now I no longer know what I meant to say by besides. I no longer wish to. I cannot. I want one thing. I want I-330. I want her every minute, every second to be with me, with no one else. All that I wrote about unanimity is of no value. It is not what I want. I have a desire to cross it out, to tear it to pieces, to throw it away. For I know, be it a sacrilege, yet it is the truth, that the glorious day is possible only with her, and only then we are side by when we and only when we are side by side, shoulder to shoulder. Without her, the sun of tomorrow will appear to me only as a little circle cut out of a tin sheet, and the sky a sheet of tin painted blue. And I myself, I snatched the telephone receiver. I-330? Are you there? Yes, it is I. Why so late? Perhaps not too late yet. I want to ask you. I want you to be with me tomorrow, dear. Dear? I said in a very low voice, and for some reason, a thing I saw this morning at the docks flashed through my mind. Just for fun, someone put a watch under the 100-ton sledgehammer. A swing, a breath of wind in the face, and the silent 100-ton knife, like a weight on the breakable watch. A silence. I thought. I heard someone's whisper in I-330's room. Then her voice. No, I cannot. Of course, you understand that I myself. No, I cannot. While you shall see tomorrow. Night. Record 25. The descent from heaven, the greatest catastrophe in history, the known, is ended. At the beginning, all arose, and the hymn, like a solemn mantle, slowly waved above our heads, hundreds of tubes of the musical towers, and millions of human voices. For a second, I forgot everything. I forgot that alarming something at which I-330 hinted in connection with today's celebration. I think I even forgot about her. At that moment, I was the very same little boy who once wept because of the tiny ink stain on his uniform, which no one else could see, even if it be so. If nobody sees that I am covered with black, uneffaceable stains, I know it's. Do I not? I know that there should be no place for a criminal like me among these frank little open faces. What if I should rush forward and shout out all at once everything about myself? The end might follow. Let it. At least for a second, I would feel myself clear and clean and senseless like an innocent blue sky. All eyes were directed upwards in the pure morning, blue, still, moist with tears of night. A small dark spot appeared. Now it was dark, now bathed in the rays of sun. It was he, descending to us from the sky. He, the new Jehovah, in an arrow. He, as wise and as lovingly cruel as the Jehovah of the ancients. Nearer and higher towards him were drawn millions of hearts. Already he saw us, and in my mind, with him I looked over everything from the heights. Concentric circles of stands marked with dotted blue lines of unifs, like circles of a spiderweb strewn with microscopic suns, the shining of the badges, and in the center there soon the wise white spider would occupy his space. The well-doer, clad in white, the well-doer, who wisely tangled our hands and feet in the salutary net of happiness. His magnificent descent from the sky was accomplished. The brazy hymn came to silence. All sat down. At once I perceived that everything was really a very thin spiderweb, the threads of which were stretched tense and terrible, and it seemed that in a moment those threads might break, and something improbable. I half rose and looked around, and I met many lovingly worried eyes which passed from one face to another. I saw someone lifting his hands and almost imperceptibly waving his fingers. He was making signs to another. The latter replied with a similar finger sign, and the third, I understood. They were the guardians. I understood. They were alarmed by something. The spider web was stretched and trembling, and within me, as if tuned to the same wavelength of a radio, within me there was a corresponding quiver. On the platform, a poet was reciting his pre-electrical ode. I could not hear a single word. I only felt the rhythmic swing of the hexadramatic pendulum, and with its every motion I felt how nearer and nearer there was approaching some hour set for. I continued to turn over face after face like pages, but I could not find the only one I was seeking, the one I needed to find at once, as soon as possible. For one more swing of the pendulum and it was he. Certainly it was he. Below, past the main platform, gliding over the sparkling glass, the air wings flapped by. The running body gave a reflection of the double-curved S, like a noose which was rolling towards some intricate passages. Among the stands, I-330, there is some thread between them. I have always felt some thread between them. I don't know yet what that thread is, but someday I shall untangle it. I planted my gaze on him. He was rushing farther away. Behind him, that invisible thread. There he stopped. There. I was pierced, twisted together into a knot as if by lightning, like many volted electric charge. In my row, not more than 40 degrees from me, S stopped and bowed. I saw I-330, and beside her the smiling, repellent, negro-lipped R-13. My first thought was to rush to her and cry, "Why with him? Why did you not want?" But the salutary invisible spiderweb bound by fast my hands and feet, so gritting my teeth together, I sat stiff as iron, my gaze fixed upon them, a sharp physical pain at my heart. I remember my thoughts. If non-physical causes affect physical pain, then it is clear that I regret that I did not come to any conclusion. I remember only that something about soul flashed through my mind, a purely nonsensical ancient expression. His soul fell into his boots, passed through my head. My heart sank. The hexameter came to an end. It was about to start. What it? The 5-minute pre-election recess established my custom. The custom established pre-electoral silence. But now it was not that pious, really prayer-like silence that it usually was. Now it was as in the ancient days, when there were no accumulating towers, when the sky, still untamed in those days, would roar from time to time with its storms. It was like the lull before the storm of the ancients. The air seemed to be made of transparent vaporized cast iron. One wanted to breathe with one's mouth wide open. My hearing intense to painfulness registered from behind a mouse like gnawing worried whisper. Without lifting my eyes, I saw those two, I-330 and R-13, side by side, shoulder to shoulder, and on my knees, my trembling, foreign, hateful, hairy hands. Everybody was holding a badge with a clock in its hands. 1, 2, 3, 5 minutes. For the main platform, a cast iron slow voice. Those in favor shall lift their hands. If only I dared to look straight into his eyes as formerly straight and devotedly, and think, here I am, my whole self, take me. But now I did not dare. I did not make an effort to raise my hand, as my joints were rusty. A whisper of millions of hands, someone subdued, ah, and I felt something was coming, falling heavily, but I could not understand what it was, and I did not have the strength or courage to take a look. Those opposed? This was always the most magnificent part of our celebration. All would remain sitting motionless, joyfully bowing their hands under the statuary yoke of that number of numbers. But now, to my horror again, I heard a rustle, light as a sigh, yet it was more distinct than even the brass tube of the hymn. Thus, the last sigh in a man's life around the people with their faces pale and with drops of cold sweat upon their foreheads. I lifted my eyes, and it took 1/100th of a second only. I saw thousands of hands raise, oppose, and fall back. I saw the pale, cross-marked face of I-330 and her lifted hand. Darkness came upon my eyes. Another 100th of a second. Silence. Quiet. The pulse. Then, as if at the sign of some mad conductor, from all the stands, rattling, shouting, a whirlwind of units lifted by the rush. The perplexed figures of the guardians running to and fro, someone's heels in the air near my eyes, and close to those heels, someone's wide open mouth tearing itself by an inaudible scream. For some reasons, this picture remains particularly distinct in my memory. Thousands of mouths noisily yelling, as if the screen of a monstrous cinema. Also, as if on a screen somewhere below at a distance, for a second, O-90 pressed against the wall in a passage, her lips white, defending her abdomen with her crossed arms. She disappeared as if washed away by a wave, or else I simply forgot her because this not on the screen any more, but within me, within my compressed heart, within the rapidly pulsating temples, over my head, somewhat to the left, R-13 suddenly jumped upon a bench, all sprinkling red, rabid. In his arms was I-330, pale, her uniform torn from shoulder to breast, her red blood on white. She firmly held him around the neck, and he, with huge leaps from bench to bench, repellent and agile like a gorilla, was carrying her away, upward. As if it were in a fire of ancient days, everything became red around me. Only one thing in my head, to jump after them, to catch them. At this moment I cannot explain to myself the source of that strength within me, but like a battering ram I broke through the crowd, over somebody's shoulders, over a bench, and I was there in a moment and caught R-13 by the collar. Don't you dare, I say, immediately! Fortunately, no one could hear my voice, as everyone was shouting and running. Who is it? What is the matter? What? R-13 turned around, his sprinkling lips trembling. He apparently thought it was one of the guardians. What? I do not want. I won't allow. Put her down at once. But I was only sprinkling angrily with his lips, shook his head, and ran on. Then I am terribly ashamed to write all this down, but I believe I must, so that you, my unknown readers, may make a complete study of my disease. Then I hit him over the head with all my might. You understand? I hit him. This I remember distinctly. I remember also the feeling of liberation that followed my action, a feeling of lightness in my whole body. I-330 slid quickly out of his arms. Go away, she shouted to R-. Don't you see that he go? R-13 showed his white negro lips, sprinkled into my face some word, dived down and disappeared, and I picked up I-330, pressed her firmly to myself, and carried her away. My heart was beating forcibly. It was enormous, and with every beat it would splash out such a thundering, such a hot, such a joyful wave, a flash. Let them below there. Let them toss and rush and yell and fall. What matter if something has fallen, if something has been shattered to dust? Little matter. Only to remain this way and carry the same evening, 22 o'clock. I hold my pen with great difficulty. Such an extraordinary fatigue after all the dazzling events of this morning. Is it possible that the strong, salutary, centuries-old walls of the United States have fallen? Is it possible that we are again without a roof over our heads, back in the wild state of freedom like our remote ancestors? Is it possible that we have lost our well-doer, opposed on the day of unanimity? Opposed? I am ashamed of them, painfully, fearfully ashamed. But who are they, and who am I? They, we? Do I know? I shall continue. She was sitting where I had brought her, on the uppermost glass bench, which was hot from the sun. Her right shoulder and the beginning of the wonderful and incalculable curve were uncovered, and an exceedingly thin serpent of blood. She seemed not to be aware of the blood, or that her breast was uncovered. No, I would say rather, she seemed to see all that that seemed to feel that it was essential to her, that if her uniform were buttoned, she would have torn it. She would have. And tomorrow, she breathed the words through sparkling white clenched teeth. Tomorrow, nobody knows what. Do you understand? Neither nor I nor anyone knows. It is unknown. Do you realize what a joy it is? Do you realize what all that was certain has come to an end? Now, things will be new, improbable, unforeseen. Below, the human waves were still foaming, tossing, roaring, but they seemed to be very far away, and to be growing more and more distant, for she was looking at me. She slowly drew me into herself through the narrow golden windows of her pupils, and thus remained silent for a while, and for some reason I recalled how once I watched some queer yellow pupils through the green wall, while above the wall birds were soaring. Or was this another time? Listen, if nothing particular happens tomorrow, I shall take you there. Do you understand? No, I did not understand, but I nodded in silence. I was dissolved. I became infinitesimal, a geometrical point. After all, there is some logic, a peculiar logic of today, in the state of being a point. A point has more unknowns than any other entity, and if a point should start to move, might become thousands of curves or hundreds of solids. I was afraid to budge. What might I have become if I had moved? It seemed to me that everybody, like myself, was afraid now of even the most minute of motions. At this moment, for instance, as I sit and write, everyone is still hiding in his glass cell, expecting something. I do not hear the buzzing of elevators, usually at this hour, or laughter, or steps. From time to time, numbers pass in couples through the halls, whispering on tiptoe. What will happen tomorrow? What will happen of me tomorrow?